Arnaud is hard at work, so I'm bringing a little sandwich. Hard at work.
Yay, just about to export. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cannes Canon, and today we did manage to get to the beach. In fact, right here, the stage you see is the stage that is used for the Cinéma de la Plage. Right now it's the morning, so it's not set up, there's not all the chairs in front, and we're taking advantage of that.
Today's episode, we are going to be talking about the new films by Jafar Panahi and Joachim Trier.
میگم دوز این داروی شاید زیاد بوده کارشو ساخته.
Jafar Panahi's new film, It Was Just an Accident, is a film that he deliberately wanted to not reveal too many details about just before the premiere. We're going to talk about some of the basic things of the plot, but if you want to know nothing about it, it is a film that is quite fun to watch as the plot starts to reveal itself and unfold. So I encourage you guys to do so. This is a film that starts with a simple accident. A man running over a stray dog who has to try to repair his car, but as he does so, there's a man called Vahid who winds up being our main character who recognizes him, or thinks he recognizes him, as being his torturer from years ago. Something I want to mention right away is that yes, even though this is Jafar Panahi, the Jafar Panahi we've known for the last decade or so for his meta fictions, this is almost like a return to his Circle era, where he does these political narrative fiction films.
That's a little bit what we were talking about when we chose Crimson Gold, rather than going with one of his more meta films. We had broken down Panahi's career into three phases. That there was the films for children, there was the political films, and then there was the meta fiction. It Was Just an Accident is either moving back into that second phase of political works, or it's moving into a new fourth phase. This is not the Jafar Panahi of No Bears or Taxi. This is a different Jafar Panahi, an evolved Jafar Panahi. It's the Jafar Panahi that made The Circle, made Crimson Gold, made Offside. However, it's that Jafar Panahi with 20 years worth of experience of corruption within the system.
What I think is so brilliant about the film is just how well it balances this tone of the absurdity of the situation and the lens to what these kind of normal people are doing. But also, you know, there's obviously a little bit of tension here. There's a little bit of suspense here. Panahi never treats like these things as purely dramatic situations, I think. He's very good at showing these things as almost casual to a certain extent, instead of making it so heavy. He's much more in a limbo of comedy and drama.
It's very interesting that a film as heavy and political as this one is shockingly lighthearted. This is a film about torture. This is a film about kidnapping. This is a film about wanting to take revenge on someone and bury them in a shallow grave alive. The fact that it is such an entertaining and funny and light film for that premise.
It's also a film that shows some of the best of humanity. You know, these people, despite having been through some of the worst times, still has the intention of making things right. There are these things of like, is it right to take revenge on people who have inflicted pain on you? What is your moral responsibility towards the people who are merely associated? And I think all of this leads, and I would hope you would agree, to some of the best last 10 minutes I have seen in recent cinema history.
I will be completely honest here. This is the worst that festival fatigue hit me in the entire time. This specifically is a really bad film for that to happen in, because the whole point of this film is it's a series of escalating consequences.
Yes.
And every single thing that happens gradually unfolds. You drift for 2 minutes and suddenly you've missed a crucial step in that plot. Alongside The Secret Agent, those are the two films that I'm walking away from this festival going, I need to rewatch that in a setting that is not 25 movies deep and exhausted, but that's the name of the game. That's how festivals are. That's what we deal with when we're here.
That's really bad luck that those are the films that we're profiling.
I know, because it hasn't been anything else.
I hope you're gonna have a really great time revisiting this, because this was one of my big surprises of the festival. I haven't been a major fan of Panahi. This one for me was just like a great time from beginning to end, and again, like there is a shot at the end of the film that is just static on a certain character that holds for 8 minutes. And it's one of the great feats of performance and of screenwriting that I've seen in a while, not to mention the very ending of the film, which is really chilling.
Panahi is optimism and Panahi is cheekiness, and the way that he blends together this sort of reflective mode that he's been using for the past 10 years, which is very clever and biting and satirical, but he mixes that with his own lived experience, the things that he's lived through as a political prisoner. It really could not have been made by anyone else.
In the form, you might not initially recognize it as such, but in the writing and in the sensibility, it feels Panahi. I'm starting to understand that Panahi's version of political cinema is to aseptize his situations as much as possible in order to almost normalize acts in a certain ways. I don't think torture should be normalized, but in the sense that in Offside, for example, it should be normal that people can see a soccer game. It's hard to describe exactly, but there's something about Panahi's sensibility that maybe this makes for cinema that won't be like as impactful as it can potentially be, because it will never be as sensational, but there's a certain maturity in this kind of blend of the dramatic and the comic.
It's also worth noting this is Panahi's first film since the Women Life Freedom movement. And something that's notable there is, despite the fact that Panahi has throughout his entire career been a very dissident filmmaker, gone against what the government wants, this is still the first film that he's made in which the women are not wearing hijabs. It seems like in solidarity, here you have a filmmaker who is very much a dissident, who is very much breaking those rules.
Well, the sun's out, and that means it's time to talk about Joachim Trier's Sentimental Value.
Ooh.
Nei, det er jo en bra ting da, egentlig, men han skal lage film igjen.
Hvilket prosjekt da?
Det er det han snakket med deg om.
Min film? Den han skrev til meg?
Ja, den du ikke ville spille i.
And the sun's out is how I feel about this, because my God, it has been bleak for me. It's not that this has been a terrible festival. It's that most films here have been good. There's been very, very little that has been a shock to the system for me, that has blown me away in the way that I hoped.
Well, I mean, It Was Just an Accident was kind of that.
Yeah, that was a little bit for you. It didn't do that for me. I'd been waiting for something to just be like yes, this is why we come to Cannes. Sentimental Value, in my opinion, was that shock to the system that I needed. It was that film that from 5-10 minutes in, I knew this is something really special. I'm witnessing something that is going to matter in cinema.
I'm not as big of a fan of Joachim Trier. I really like his work. I'm not necessarily in love with his sensibility or his way of seeing the world. Sentimental Value, while I really did love the film, it wasn't, something I thought was absolutely mind-blowing or anything like that, but one of the strongest ideas of the film is what you were talking about in our Trier video, which is the chapter formatting. This is not a film that is formatted literally in chapters. You don't have a text that says chapter 1, chapter 2, but I really liked what you were talking about, Trier doing an album film with a bunch of different songs. But the way he handles that here is that maybe 10 times throughout the film, something like that, you have a cut to black, and then the next sequence starts. It very clearly separates sequences instead of just cutting to the next scene. It makes you have to work as an audience member to understand how much time separates these areas, who are we now going to be focusing on, sometimes even what are we watching. I'm thinking of the scene, for example, where you see 2 kids running away from like Gestapo agents or something like that.
There's like this beautiful one-take shot where the kids are running and trying to jump on a train, and then the train starts moving.
And you're just like, what is the link between this and the story? And it takes you a few minutes to figure it out.
There's another scene with the librarian as well.
Yes.
That I really enjoyed, where we just spend probably about 3 minutes watching this woman go through files and pull things off shelves and put them on a cart. And it's only at the very end when she puts a name onto the cart that we understand exactly what has just happened. Something that we can draw a line through with Trier's filmography is his connection to place. The Oslo trilogy, of course, those 3 films are very distinctly about a city and about the way that the characters interact with that city. Sentimental Value is similarly tied to place, except instead of being about a city in this one, it's very much about a house. There's about a 5-minute introduction, which is just talking about the home that Nora has lived in, her family, her sister, her mother. We almost get a sense that it's not Nora who's the main character of the story, it is the house itself.
That's the best idea of the film. We knew the plot synopsis of the film, but when that opening sequence happened, I realized, oh, this is a film about the household. The people who inhabit that house, but also how that household evolves, fractures. Literally, there's a fracture in the house, right?
Oh, like what a great visual motif to literally the title card comes up over a piece of wall that has a shatter through the middle of it, which is very literally what this movie is about. It is a film about a fracture between a father and a daughter. This is really a film about the film industry.
It feels very inside baseball.
Very inside baseball, and you do have to keep in mind when you hear the reports of the 19-minute standing ovation that like this is the most receptive crowd you will ever get to this movie. There were certain jokes in the film.
Should we mention it?
Yeah,
Should we mention
I think
the joke?
We can briefly, let's not say exactly what it is, but there's a great bit involving DVDs of Irreversible and the Piano Teacher.
Yes.
The entire theater started laughing. No one else would catch that joke except for a room full of journalists at Cannes who instantly were like, oh my God, that's fucking Irreversible. It really understands that this is a movie for film people. This is a movie that Letterboxd gonna eat up. People who are in the industry are gonna eat up because it is a movie not just about family, not just about art, but about how art can be both a creative and a destructive force within a family.
Yes.
That a father's obsession with his work can make it so that he cannot connect with his daughters, that he is taken away from them.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, art can be creative, it can build bonds, it can create friendships. It pulls people apart and it pushes them together.
There are still interesting links, like you were alluding to. For instance, the fact that, you know, when your professional life takes so much time is the only way to spend time with your family to bring them into your professional life. How do you reckon with parents you can only interact with when you're working with them?
One of my favorite moments in the film is when Gustav goes to visit an old friend of his, a cinematographer that he'd like to bring onto the project. And he apologizes to him and says, I'm sorry I haven't kept up with you. I'm not good at keeping up with relationships outside of my movies. I think that speaks to something that a lot of people deal with in life, that work becomes such a forefront of our lives that when we're not seeing people as part of our work, it's difficult to connect with them. I think to Guillermo del Toro, who says that he makes films as a way to have a social life. He forms these connections with people over the work. And I've found in my own life as well, I struggle to form genuine friendships with people outside of the context of having something that we share in common.
Yeah, I mean, look at us right now. We're working on this series,
We're working on this.
Cannes Canon.
And I think that this is a way that you and I have always been able to be friends, is that we talk about film. We talk about this shared thing that we both love. I have found, even with like family relationships, that I can often struggle to keep up those bonds. That's what I think is so brilliant about Sentimental Value, because it's a film about people who are struggling to connect with each other, are struggling to have that sort of emotional intimacy on a level that goes deeper than what they're working on. And to that point as well, there's this really great idea of how at times our art can understand each other better than we can as people.
Yes, and I think the conclusion of the film really underlines that idea. Wraps up kind of the theme of the household in a really original way.
In a stunning way, like just it kind of shatters you in a little bit.
It didn't shatter me, but I thought it was still quite powerful.
A little bit, because the whole film is about the evolution of this household, the way that it grows, the way that it changes, and without spoilers, to see what happens to the household at the very end. The house itself seems to no longer be a part of their lives, and yet it very much is. And it is immortalized on film. It becomes this thing that stays with them in a way. We need to very quickly talk about the performances. Career best work, I think, from everyone involved.
Renate Reinsve's Worst Person in the World performance is still...
That is true,
but
and she has more to do in Worst Person in the World.
Stellan Skarsgård is incredible in this. Elle Fanning has a deeper role than I would have expected.
I really didn't expect her to have so much range in it. I like Elle Fanning a lot, but she showed so much versatility in here, and I love the way that they handled that character.
Yes, it would have been so easy to make her kind of a comic relief.
Or to kind of make her vapid or represent the difference between European filmmaking and Hollywood filmmaking.
And the celebrity culture and whatnot.
And someone with ego.
Yeah.
But she's not. She's this very well-rounded young woman who she genuinely cares about the art. I'm glad that we both got at least one movie this time that just, completely knocked us down, bowled us over.
But I think a film that both, maybe not floored us, but that absolutely like invigorated us was Splitsville. We're both fans of Michelangelo Covino's first film, The Climb. If you've not seen The Climb, treat yourself. It is a comedic gem.
And the thing that I love about Michelangelo Covino is that he's taking screenplays that feel like they could be treated very easily like Wedding Crashers. You could easily cast Will Ferrell, Vince Vaughn in the lead roles and just go, fuck it, we're making this and we're shooting it like it's like Talladega Nights.
That sounds a little bit like a discredit to the screenplay, which I think is akin to The Climb, is not like revolutionary, but the kind of scene-by-scene progression of the film is so unique to Michelangelo Covino and how events will kind of unfold and develop in such weirdly unexpected ways.
The opening of the film being them witnessing a car crash in the middle of a hand job.
Yes.
And that being the impetus for them to get a divorce. The whole film is full of sequences like this that just, it takes things as far as you could possibly go. There's one fight scene that feels like it could be out of an episode of like Family Guy. It's so ridiculously over the top.
Tom Cruise, where are you at?
Constantly, every single scene is an invention.
He's not doing the gimmick again that The Climb had, which is to say that every scene happens in a oneer. There are great oneers in this.
Fantastic oneers,
but
yes.
the whole film, it doesn't use that gimmick anymore, but the spirit...
And I think that gives it a little bit more freedom.
Oh yeah, of course, and exactly. But what I'm saying is that the spirit of making the cinematic comedy, quote unquote, is absolutely still there. The ideas that he brings to the table are absolutely brilliant. The performances are all completely top notch. This is like career best work from everybody involved.
Yeah.
Dakota Johnson, like I've liked her here and there, and I think she chooses her projects really well. But like here, she's just so well cast.
Yep.
She's perfect in her energy. Same for Adria Arjona. Hitman wasn't a fluke. She's fantastic in this. Kyle Marvin, though, damn, that was my highlight. He is so incredible in this. He's just so not an alpha male, like he's just a guy who gets shit on, cannot defend himself for the life of him for the most part. And
there's some amazing scenes of him being very passive-aggressively friendly towards everyone.
Yeah.
What they're doing here is taking that very Sundance indie, that American indie, making it feel like it should have come out of world cinema instead. This easily could have been like a Sundance premiere. But it's here for a reason.
If Sundance premieres were always this good, that would be my favorite.
But this is the thing, is like, it has all of the feelings of a Sundance movie through the lens of a Cannes film. It is here for a reason. When I saw that this was in the lineup, I went, oh, yeah, they did something really special. This is not just going to be the classic like American comedy that we've come to expect.
Yeah, I mean, we already knew this from the previous film,
We
right?
did, but at the same time, looking at the cast list, looking at, it's Dakota Johnson, it's Adria Arjona.
Yeah, he can actually get these two name actors this time.
And what I kept thinking and looking at the premise and everything, all I could think to myself was, oh God, I hope he hasn't sacrificed his style. I hope he hasn't just gone into this full mainstream.
Kind of in the way that people discuss Edgar Wright as like, oh wow, he actually like does things cinematically and all that, and he's such a good director. This is the same kind of thing where it's like, hey, it's a fucking great comedy with an incredible script and great gags, and it's also directed with style and with great visual ideas without ever being like artsy for the sake of artsiness.
Edgar Wright is a great comparison. Like, I think Michelangelo Covino in future years could be seen sort of in that same light.
We need to keep making cinematic comedies for Cannes, plain and simple. That's my goal.
And another film that I found incredibly entertaining, which you've also seen, is Un Poeta, the Colombian film about the most narcissistic loser of a poet of all time.
Oscar Restrepo se definiría como un sempiterno, un perpetuo soñador.
¿Qué le pasó a usted, Oscar? Como era inteligente, todo un profesional y mírese.
Yo estoy escribiendo un libro.
Hay un libro.
Yo soy un poeta.
Usted es un desempleado.
It is so funny.
Yeah.
It is so ridiculously out there. But what I really appreciated with this film is, despite the fact that this is the biggest loser of all time, there's a lot of empathy for this guy. Although he's just a massive fuck up, you always feel like he's trying.
Yeah.
He's trying so hard.
He's just failing like spectacularly,
fucking miserably.
And this is a midlife crisis movie about an artist not being able to make his art, or being too mediocre to make his art. Sounds like such a painful watch, and yet this is a huge pleasure because it doesn't take itself seriously. It's a fascinating main character. This character meets a young teenager who writes poems casually here and there, and he, almost like the Nadav Lapid's kindergarten teacher, it starts to develop a bit of a bond between these two, where he really wants to push her poetry out there, and she's a little bit like reluctant, or doesn't see the importance of that, especially coming from a lower class family. The heart of the film becomes this story that takes some wild turns, and which kind of further and further, ruin the life of our main character in hilariously dark ways.
Reading the premise, I wrote this movie off. I thought that was going to be dull and like a drag to sit through. And it's so good. The way that it finds these characters and finds the idiosyncrasies of them, it's perfectly cast. With a lot of different actors, this main character would have been insufferable.
Yeah.
But he has this very intriguing strangeness to the way that he looks. He's always grinning in a way. It's like he's got this sort of permanent smile on his face.
Well, whether it's for a job interview or to talk about his poetry or something like that, he puts on this like artificial smile without ever changing it, and it just doesn't work. But he thinks that he's pulling it off. And also, so something a little bit unexpected is the look of the film.
I think it was shot in Super 16.
On
That's
16,
what it looks like.
But the framing around the shot is kept in. Normally you would crop in so that you don't see the little hairs on the edges of the frame. Here it's kept in, and there's this very retro, almost improvised look to the camera movements and to the way things are shot that works really, really well for this kind of film. And while we're on the subject of great comedies, I'll briefly mention the Quebec film Amour, Apocalypse, or in English, Peak Everything, which I thought was really good. It's a film that radiates optimism because it tries to tell us that we still have to live and make the most with the people we love around us, despite things looking grim. A really fun watch. The theater was eating it up. And so at Cannes, I think these three films show that you can have these comedies with an artistic touch that still can appeal to a broader demographic. So those were some of our highlights from the Cannes Film Festival. I hope you enjoy. In the next episode, we're going to cover our last two profile directors, Bigan and Saïd Roustai, two really exciting up-and-coming filmmakers. So be sure to catch us then.